House Audio presents The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead.
I met an old man. I said, tell me your story. He took out a notepad and wrote something for me. Then he kept walking on down the road, and I watched him disappear like smoke. And I thought I'd just seen a ghost. Then I looked down at what he wrote. It said, son, when you grow up you'll be fine. I know you've got questions on your mind. Life is gonna happen one way or the other, whether you like it or not. Stop looking for the answers and you'll find what you've got. I met a young man, searching for glory. I took out an old pen and wrote in my story. Then I kept walking on down the road. When your time is up, it's time to go. I pray he reads what's on the note and takes to heart what I wrote. I said, son, when you grow up you'll be fine. I know you've got questions on your mind. Life is gonna happen one way or the other, whether you like it or not. Stop looking for the answers and you'll find what you've got. When you grow up you'll be fine. I know you've got questions on your mind. Life is gonna happen one way or the other, whether you like it or not. Stop looking for the answers and you'll find what you've got.
So I'm not gonna lie, after all of that stuff that I just showed you of like cleaning in the house and getting the laundry done and all that, I've basically sat on the couch and done nothing. It's Monday, so I'm supposed to be working today. But today was a holiday, technically. It's a holiday that we were told, like, as of last week was gonna be a new holiday for my job. I don't exactly know why. I had just gotten an email last week where basically, like, so I am technically a contracted employee with where I work, and sometimes with how things are is that sometimes they will have the same holidays that we all take off. There will be some holidays where only, like, we get to take it off if we're told we get to, you know, those kinds of things, but we would have to put PTO in every time, and like our PTO basically includes our holiday time, basically. It's like that we would have to basically take the PTO we accrue and put that towards holidays, and then whatever is left over is like actual PTO that we can take off over the course of the year. So last year, we had to work on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Basically, they decided this year they were going to, the place I work with that is like what contracts out employees to this big company that I work for, they have informed us that we were going to take the holiday because not only was the company I work for taking the holiday, but there was something about the fact basically that they wanted to honor Martin Luther King in a sense, and basically also just because everybody else was going to be, that's not a contracted employee at this company, was going to be taking it off, that they were just like, you guys are going to take it off too, and that then also increased the amount of PTO I get every month. So to kind of counteract with that, they basically said that you're going to get a little more PTO this year than you did last year to balance the fact that you are getting an extra holiday, which I think is awesome, because I do enjoy the fact that they take the time to give us the time off. And I also appreciate this whole thing of like, wanting to basically like make it known that this is an important day and not just, some people just don't always recognize the kinds of holidays we have for what reasons they are. And I know that like, a lot of people don't know a lot about Martin Luther King Jr. So today I really wanted to focus on that a lot of my day, and that's why I started The Nickel Boys, which you guys saw earlier. That is a story by Colson Whitehead. It is actually a story that takes place after King's death, when he was assassinated in 1968. I believe it takes place like at least a couple years after. I don't know necessarily off the top of my head, but it follows a young boy, at least right now, it follows a young boy named Elwood, who is a black young man. He's about 12 years old, and basically all I know about it right now is like, it's just kind of following him as he's living his life and kind of seeing the world through his eyes, especially now with there having been a lot done with the civil rights movement. There is a lot that's talked about Brown v. the Board of Education, which was a huge case that opened up the door for black people to be accepted into white schools and all these things. So it's touching on a very prominent point of history. And I have read a Colson Whitehead book in the past. I read The Underground Railroad when I was in college for an African American literature class that I had taken in my last semester of college. And basically, I loved it. I loved The Underground Railroad. It was one of my favorite books because Colson Whitehead took that story and kind of gave it like a magicalness to it, because it's all about the Underground Railroad, which if you know anything about it, it was basically the way that people in the South were able to get slaves to the North and basically have them escape their slaveholders. It was essentially a set of tunnels that were underground that they could get black people to traverse across, that would get them from safe house to safe house and eventually make their way up toward the north and sometimes up into Canada, where they would be ultimately free. What's interesting and the real magic to it is that it's not just a set of tunnels, like it's a literal railroad, like a literal train underground is what's carrying these people, which it's more of a metaphorical sense, I think, and a little bit more of a magicalness to it than what's really happened. But that's the kind of feel that Colson Whitehead had with that book. I have not felt that with the Nickel Boys as of yet. The Nickel Boys is more so referring to, I think, a set of children, a set of boys that come from a certain school. Like they kind of all end up one way or the other because they all came from the same school, that kind of thing. I'm not quite sure what it is yet. I'm only like 3 chapters in. But I will say there's massive, like, trigger warnings for racism, because I kid you not, the end of the 3rd chapter, which is very early in the book, there's a car that gets stolen, and a deputy sheriff stops Elwood and says the car was stolen, and the kind of car it was, he says only an N-word would steal that kind of a car. And, the whole thing with, saying the N-word in the book doesn't jar me as much as it would if a white person had written it, because Colson is black, and it is also indicating the language of the time. I know people have a lot of an issue with using the N-word in music and, whatever. Usually you will see black people use the N-word in music, so I find it okay because it's a word that they, are able to use. It has a very different connotation to them now. It still has a very negative connotation in a lot of ways, but if you use it like as a black person within a black community, it's a little bit more accepted. I, as a white woman, definitely will never feel comfortable ever uttering it. It makes me very uncomfortable a lot of times to hear it, especially by other white people. It does not make sense to me how they can say that and it be okay with it based on the connotation of the word. I know it's just a word, but it's a word that has a very long history behind it, and I do not feel comfortable ever using it because of that, even if it's in a song, even if it's in a book. But the point that I wanted to make here is that, like, with that word in particular, there are a lot of books that are from, say, like the 70s and the 60s, or even older than that, and they use the word, the N word. And I know a lot of people, for instance, dog on Stephen King for instance, you know, him using that a lot in a lot of his older writing when it came to certain characters who had racist tendencies. Now, I would like to say that in the experience I've had with reading Stephen King's books now, from his first published to, you know, his more newest stuff that I've been doing for the last year, there have only been a few instances where I have seen the word come across, and all the times that it ever did, it was always a character that had a type of vernacular where they use that as everyday language. But there would be plenty of other characters who were not of the same mindset, and so they would never say those words. They would never, you know, have those words come up in their vocabulary. And so I understand the issue with the fact that the word does come up in some of Stephen King's books, but I also read some of his newer things, and his newer books have no indication of that, unless, again, it is a character that specifically uses that word as a word of derogatorism, or uses that word as a way to threaten people. It's not very often you will see the word come up unless it has a very specific purpose. That is basically based on my experience with it. I know that there's a lot of people who are still offended by it, and I totally respect that because it's a very nasty word. It is a word, like I said, that makes me very uncomfortable. So I do understand why people are still, you know, hesitant to read anything by him because of that. But I will say that if you do look into reading his stuff, it is something that in only very specific instances, it is a word that comes up. So I'm going to get off my soapbox there for right now. To go back to the Nickel Boys, I like it so far. It's, like I said, I'm only about 3 chapters into it. I'm just over like an hour into the audiobook, but I'm very already afraid based on that last chapter of what is going to happen, because I have a very sneaking suspicion this is going to delve a lot into things like police brutality and racial profiling, which again is something that's not new. It's been around for a long time. It's books like this, though, especially when listening to it today on MLK Day, that it's even more important to me to acknowledge the fact that things even today have not changed in terms of the amount of racism that is in the world. While, yes, Black people have gained a lot of rights in the last nearly 60 years since the civil rights movement has gone through, there is still a lot of fear for Black people to live a normal life every day because of the fact that they are constantly afraid of being pulled over or approached by police officers that could have ill intent. And especially with how a lot of things happened in June of 2020, it's even more of a scare, because obviously the police force has indicated more so than ever, it's never been something that's been a secret, but more so than ever, they have indicated that they do not respect any individual that is not white, and especially if they believe that the person is somehow a threat, even if they are not showcasing that they are a threat of any kind. I'm very passionate about wanting to speak out against all of this, and if you disagree with me or you think that I'm some stupid social justice warrior that needs to keep her mouth shut, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to be blocked, because I am not here to sit and be ridiculed for advocating for human rights. I believe every single person in this world, white, Black, Asian, Native, anything like that, deserves the same chances, the same treatment as every single white person that is on this earth. It is ridiculous to me how we are living in a very technology-based world. We're living in a world that 50 years ago most people thought would have been drastically different, and we're still very much in a lot of ways the same fucking people that were around 50 years ago in a lot of cases. There have been major steps in terms of, you know, a lot of different areas with technology, with LGBTQ rights that have been actually slowly been being pulled back again because of the Trump administration, but I am not going to sit here and take any kind of attack on me because of the fact that I am an advocate for human rights. If you don't believe that a black person should be just treated as any normal person walking down the street, you have a problem, because obviously you don't give a shit about your fellow man. The only difference that there is really between any of us in any capacity with between races is skin color and maybe some facial differences. The way that our faces are structured might be different. The way that our bodies might be structured might be slightly different based on race. But underneath all of that, we're still all the same fucking skeleton. For the most part, every human being has the same amount of fucking bones in their skeleton, and we all have the same kind of DNA. So why is it that we can't extend that and understand that we are all fucking people? And we all deserve the same rights as a white person does. I'm never gonna stop thinking about that, and if it comes up, I will not stop talking about it, because I'm tired of feeling like I don't speak on it enough. I feel like I stop talking about it sometimes because it just annoys people, but I'm tired of that. And the Nickel Boys and it being MLK Day and having thought a long time on all of this stuff since especially the Trump administration has been in charge, it's made it very apparent to me that while I am such a huge advocate for Black Lives Matter and believing that every person on this earth, no matter who they are, no matter where they come from, no matter what race or skin tone they have, or religion or sexuality or gender identity or what, I've not done enough in a lot of ways, and I'm sick and tired of feeling like I'm doing enough, and I'm gonna change that. And it starts with me talking about these issues more on my channel. And if you don't like it, you don't have to watch me. You can unsubscribe, you can unfollow me. I could give a shit less, because I'm not gonna sit here and not discuss these things that are coming up because they're important. While they may not necessarily affect me as a white person, they affect the people I care about. I have friends who are constantly afraid for their lives sometimes because of the fact that they feel like, for one, with the pandemic, they can't go outside, and for two, even if they could, they are afraid of being approached by a police officer because they're afraid of either being threatened or they're afraid of being accused of something they didn't do, because that's what police officers sometimes do to black people or anyone that seems to them in any way suspicious, even though they're not doing something suspicious. So I'm gonna step off my soapbox there, but this day has brought a lot to mind in terms of what I want to change about myself and a lot of things that I feel like I need to do to better myself as a person, and I feel like I haven't done a lot of that enough, and I'm tired of feeling like I've not done enough, and so I'm actually going to start really being more aware of what I'm not doing and making amends of that by showcasing my desire to do better, my desire to advocate for my friends' rights. I've been sitting here for about 17 minutes now just talking, and so I want to move on to something a little bit different now that I feel like I've expressed what I wanted to express. So yeah, like I said, The Nickel Boys is going well. I like the book. I got over an hour into it already today. I don't know if I'm going to listen to any more of it. I would like to finish the part I'm on, though, because I'm in the middle of a part of the story where, like, on Overdrive, they section off the book into parts. I just basically started part 2, so I would maybe like to finish that today if I can, which would get me a third of the way through the book. And then I did read a little bit more today of Verona Comics by Jennifer Dugan. This is a young adult contemporary. I started this last weekend, and I didn't read a lot over the course of the weekend, and I haven't really read much today. I've read about 25 pages almost. And I do plan on trying to finish this sometime this week. I wanted to try to finish it today, but I don't know if that's going to happen because I read a little bit earlier today and then I just was not feeling it, so I started just watching YouTube videos instead. So I am going to try to pick this up after I get done with therapy and after dinner and stuff, because I do have my therapy appointment in about less than 50 minutes. So I want to read this after that, and then hopefully when dinner is done and Robert and I have eaten, I'll read more of this, but I don't know if I'm going to get it done tonight. It's a very short book, though. It's only like 327 pages, so if I don't finish it today, I probably will finish it tomorrow over the course of work, because as you guys know, I take breaks during work. About every hour or so, I take about a 20-minute break to get my eyes off of a screen and to then also stand up, move around, stretch my legs a little bit, and sit and read a chapter or two sometimes, depending on the chapter lengths of the book. This one has fairly short chapters for the most part. I have come across one that was like about 10 pages, maybe, something like that, but they're otherwise really short chapters, and it's dual perspective, which is always very fun. So like this one a lot so far, but I'm only now 50 pages into the book, so there's not much I can say. To reiterate this quickly, the story of this one, for those of you that don't know, Verona Comics is a dual perspective story that follows Jubilee, who is our main female protagonist, and Ridley, who is our main male protagonist. This is a Romeo and Juliet retelling of sorts, but it is set in a time, like modern time, where Jubilee is the daughter and stepdaughter of a comic book indie store couple. Like, her mother basically remarried to this comic book artist and creator who now owns also a comic book store called Verona Comics, and basically her stepmother has had a hard time with getting the store up and running for a while and stuff like that, because as an indie bookstore, it's sometimes really hard for bookstores to compete against like the big chain stores. And Ridley is basically the son of the creator of one of those big chains, and his father and Jubilee's stepmother hate each other, absolutely disdain each other. But when they go to a comic book convention to promote both of these stores, and also for Jubilee's stepmother to promote her comic that just came out that's very, very popular, Ridley and Jubilee meet in this prom scenario that they have at the comic convention. It's like a big dance, you know, social event, whatever it is, basically. They don't know who each other are, though. Ridley, though, has just found out that his favorite comic book artist, who is Jubilee's stepmother, is Jubilee's stepmother, and now he understands that he has been flirting with this girl who probably hates his guts, has actually already established that she hates his family, even though she doesn't know that Ridley is a part of the family of the chain store that Vera, her stepmother, is like enemies with, basically. Ridley's, though, just found out that that's the case, but he's kind of like, she doesn't know that I'm a part of this family. Maybe I can still kind of get this to work out. But the thing is Ridley has a really high, like, anxiety disorder. Like, it's bad. Like, I would even place trigger warnings in this for anxiety attacks and panic attacks, because almost every instance he's in, he has some kind of mild panic attack, but then there is a massive panic attack that he has on page in his first chapter. And then to complicate things too, while these guys are having their own Romeo and Juliet scenario, Jubilee is also trying to get into this really prestigious Carnegie Hall music program as a cellist, and she spends all her time on it. Like, that's the thing that she's most passionate about. So that's going to cause some conflict with this relationship as well, because she doesn't necessarily want to give up on any of that, but this relationship she has with Ridley may cause some major conflict with it. So that's basically all that you know from the synopsis and from the first couple of chapters. I'm currently on chapter 7, so I don't know, like I said, how much more I'm going to read of this today. I would like to try to maybe get to halfway through the book at the very least. That is, though, if I can get this going after I finish therapy and then maybe reading after dinner. Yeah, that's basically it for right now. I'm going to head off because I have now about 40 minutes until my therapy appointment, and I want to finish this video I was watching before that comes up. So I will talk to all of you guys probably tomorrow with an update on my reading, because I just really don't know how much I'm going to read today, or if any of it's going to be interesting, truthfully. Good morning, everyone. It is 8:30 in the morning. I did no other reading yesterday after I last talked to you. I just it didn't end up happening. Also, if you hear any beeping in the background, I apologize. We need to essentially like fix our fire smoke detector, whatever it is. Anyway, today has already kind of got off to an interesting start. There's been an update with some stuff with work, like one of the programs I use for work, and it's not like basically a bad thing, but something has updated that I wasn't aware of, and I'm making sure like it was supposed to be an update that was needed to be done, as opposed to like something that just completely broke. So yeah, I'm trying to get some information on that, but I didn't read anything else yesterday. I'm gonna probably listen to more of the Nickel Boys. I'll wait to do that until the next work session I do to start the Nickel Boys. I think I'm gonna, while I'm waiting to hear back on some stuff about this problem I'm having, I'm gonna do a little bit of journaling and pull my tarot cards and stuff this morning and just kind of get in the swing of the morning, kind of get started. The plan though is that, like I said, since I'll get through some more of the Nickel Boys, I may be able to finish it today because I'm already now like almost a third of the way through it. And then I would like to then also get through more of Verona Comics. As of yesterday, I ended up on page 50, and it's like a 327 page book. So I think during my breaks today, like starting in a little bit, I can get through more of this. I would like to be able to hopefully get maybe halfway through it today. I don't know though, because I was the plan for yesterday, but I just ended up watching YouTube videos. I was just really taking it easy and having a nice day. And then Robert and I had dinner, and then I was going to read after dinner, but then I still wanted to finish the YouTube videos I had on my Watch Later playlist, which wasn't many, but it was still like almost an hour and a half of videos. And then Robert and we've been watching the Lord of the Rings movies because he's never seen them, and I love them. They're like my favorite movies and some of my favorite books. Like I have an Elvish tattoo on my arm because of how much I love this series and I love the movies. That's been very fun to do. It makes my heart so happy to see that he likes the movies because they're some of my favorites. I had like a whole video where a few years ago I talked about my happy movies, which like were movies that always like bring a smile to my face when I watch them, and that trilogy of movies is definitely one of the top ones. I'm gonna go warm up my cup of coffee because it's actually kind of bad now. It's really getting cold and it's not tasting very well. When I actually feel like I've made progress in Verona Comics, I'll let you come back and let you guys know, but I don't know how much I'm gonna get through it. Like I said, would like to get about halfway through it today if I can. And of course I forget that because I have a doctor's appointment on Thursday, I have to work over today to make up for the time that I'm probably gonna be gone. Great. That means I have to work till 6 tonight. Awesome. Okay, so it's going on about noon. I have read about 26 more pages of Verona Comics and have listened to quite a bit more of the Nickel Boys. I'm getting my lunch made currently. That's the microwave going off, but I think I finally found which of the fire alarms has been going off, and I just took it off. It's not the main one. It was one of the other ones in the other game room we have where my office used to be, and I think that may have solved the issue, which if it did, I'm gonna be so happy because that's been annoying me all freaking day. So yeah, I'm basically, like I said, just waiting for my food to finish. It's got about 20 more seconds in the microwave, and then I want to reheat something else that we had for dinner last night too to go with it, because unfortunately sometimes the lunches I have, like the frozen ones that you can get like at the store where they're like the single serve, they don't always fill me up fully. So like I said, I did read about 26 more pages so far of Verona Comics. Still loving it. There is this kind of thing that's been happening though that I wanted to address because it does have to do with like the plot of the story, and that is that Ridley's character, so when he meets Jubilee, he is smitten with her, and then because he's looking for some way to get his father to notice him and basically like, you know, view him as something that's actually useful as opposed to how his father actually views him. His father basically like mentally and emotionally abuses the guy. Like, it's absolutely unfortunate because like he's a kid that like tends to mess up a lot. He's got a really major anxiety disorder, and his dad is just so concerned with his own stuff that he doesn't give a shit about his son. And unfortunately, that is like really damaging for him. So in like the heat of the moment, when his dad basically comes at him when he's drunk and is like basically threatening to hit him and all these things, and like he's also like basically talking down to him and everything, in a moment of panic, he basically says that he may have an in with getting to Verona Comics, which I guess his dad wants to acquisition. He wants to kind of like buy them out in a sense, I think, which is part of the reason why he has such a huge rivalry with Vera, who is Jubilee's stepmother. And in, like I said, a moment of panic, he says that he has an in, which is that he knows that Jubilee is Vera's stepdaughter, so he thinks that if he can get his dad to think that he's like courting her in a sense, that he can use her to get information about Verona Comics, so that hopefully then his father's company will be able to buy them out or something. Now, the thing that is awful about it in the sense that like this is seriously all like a mess that Ridley's gotten himself into because he panicked, is that he thinks that by compartmentalizing the fact that Jubilee is like a completely different person than Peak, who is what he calls Jubilee, because he didn't know that Jubilee at first was Vera's stepdaughter. He thinks that by trying to compartmentalize it, he's not really doing something shady, but in actuality, he's doing something very, very shady, and truthfully, I'm a little surprised at that, but I also understand that he kind of just did it in a moment of panic, and now he can't take it back, because especially when his father realized that his son would actually be useful to him for the first time in his entire life, you know, he actually started treating him a little bit better. Now, it's been a few days in the book since that happened, and, you know, things haven't really changed much, so, you know, Ridley was able to move in with his dad. It's closer actually to where Jubilee lives, because he lives in, because Jubilee lives somewhere, I think, on the East Coast, and Ridley was living with his mom in Seattle, so basically with moving in with his dad, he ended up being able to not only have a better way to stay in contact with Jubilee, thinking of her as Peak, but then he also has the ability to then work for his dad to try to like get Jubilee to fall for him and eventually like get information. So I basically feel like this is going to be a major point of contention that will get brought up at some point. It can't not get brought up. Jubilee can't not find out that Ridley has been faking all of this, and that's probably going to be like the big kerfuffle that happens in any romance novel. In every romance novel that you read, there is always some event or some thing that happens that basically rips apart the couple, and then by the end of it they're back together, or there is some kind of a happy ending, which it's just what happens in romance. There are no bad endings when it comes to romance. I'm curious to see though how exactly Ridley handles this, because since it is so easy for him to slip up, and because of his anxiety disorder, he is going to be overthinking everything. So I wonder how he's going to handle this. He's able to currently still compartmentalize a lot of stuff where he sees Jubilee as different than Peak, even though they're the same person. But I wonder, is this going to be something that he's going to be able to handle? Is he going to surprise himself with being able to handle it better than he expected? Or is it just going to immediately crash and burn? Is he going to at all, like, tell her? Or is she going to find out by other means? Like, I'm curious to know how this is all going to get handled, because it could go any number of ways. But I do still really like this story. I'm excited to continue with it, and you know, it's hopefully going to be a fast read. I mean, I'm already on page 76, and you know, there's still like another 2/3 of the book to go. So, good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, or no, it is not. It is Wednesday. Sorry. I'm very tired this morning. It is 10 to 9 in the morning. I have a meeting in about 10 minutes, and I just wanted to update you guys with what ended up happening yesterday. So first, I did finish a book. I did finish The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It's a book that basically talks about the fact that there is this school called the Nickel School, where basically, as I was telling you before, there was a scene where our main character Elwood gets basically arrested or like pulled over by a police officer and claims that he had stolen this car, which I guess he must have, or he was wrongfully accused. I don't know necessarily. I don't quite remember, but basically, instead of going to jail because he's so young, they basically send him to, I would consider it like a juvie school, where it's not like a like juvenile prison, but it's a school that they will typically send young black men to, that, you know, break the law and would be arrested and tried, and you know, they'd be sent there. And it kind of is like a prison in the sense that, like, it has a very prison feel. They do have like a very set schedule of when things are done, and they are not really able to leave the premises. But it's a school in the sense that they do actually, you know, have schoolwork to do. They also have this whole merit system where, like, the people that have been there longer, if they help out the people that are newer and all these things, they could possibly get out early on good behavior and all these things. So it is very much set up like a prison, but it's not supposed to be a prison, if that makes sense. And so all the boys that ever go there and graduate there basically are called the Nickel Boys. And Elwood basically meets several young men in this place and learns about them. And you basically learn about his time there and then even a little bit after. But there's something kind of interesting that happens after leaving the school. I'll just say this, it's not exactly how you expect it. Like, there is a point where you think things are fine, and then you get to the end and you realize that everything was basically a lie. I can't say it without spoiling it. That's just what I'm gonna have to say. But I think that end alone really just kind of like threw me, and I really enjoyed it. It doesn't look like it because I'm very tired this morning, but I've really come to enjoy Colson Whitehead's writing. I loved reading The Underground Railroad, like I had said before, when I was in college. I absolutely adored that book and have been slowly buying his other books. So yeah, otherwise I did also get through yesterday's 72 pages of Verona Comics. I ended up on page 122, and I still really like it. We are kind of seeing the worlds kind of come together more so, because Ridley at this point in the story basically, like I said before, he knows that he's supposed to kind of like get Jubilee to trust him so that his father can find a way to like bring Verona Comics down and basically acquisition them and all these things. But he's finding that that's very hard for him to do because, for one, Jubilee doesn't even know that him, as what she calls him as Bats, which is like basically the masked version that she met when she went to the convention prom. She doesn't know that that's him. And she also doesn't know that he's the son of her stepmother's, like, rival. But then at the same time, there's a point where Ridley, unmasked, goes into Verona Comics because he's able to. He's living out there, which I'm gonna say is somewhere on the New England coastline. Anyway, he basically goes into the store unmasked, which Jubilee doesn't know what he looks like. So he basically poses as himself. It's a very interesting scenario. There's even a point where, like, after he meets Jubilee for the first time unmasked, and she thinks that he's, like, a really, like, super dorky and awkward person, she texts him as Bats. And she's like, oh yeah, I met this guy, he's really, really sweet, but it's just never gonna happen. He's just kind of weird, and, you know, I don't know if I would really ever be interested in him. And at first, Ridley doesn't understand that it's him. He thinks that some other guys she met while at the store, like, came in and she was infatuated with. And then he realized that it was him, and so he literally says, I bolt up in bed, choking on my spit when I read the words on the screen, my mind whipping around itself, alternating between, holy shit, she's talking about me, and wait, did I just cock block myself? Like, it's so fucking funny. I think I just love this book more so for the humor, and now I'm waking up as I talk about it because I just love this book. It's so freaking cute. I adore it. The only reason I'm taking so long to go through it is because I'm just so exhausted most of the time, and I've been very easily distracted too, so it's made it very hard for me to focus on that book, but I do love reading it when I do read it. So I'm not quite halfway done with it at this point. I think I'm still just under halfway. I think once I hit the 160 mark, I'll be more so halfway through. So I'm not that far off though, so I'm actually pretty proud of myself for having read it like 72 pages, first of all, and then second of all, having finished a book. But looking at the leaderboard so far for right now, because I don't think I've done this yet for this week, but currently as of Wednesday at almost 9 o'clock in the morning, there is Sci-Fi still in last place with 411.25 points. Fantasy in third with 601.25. Contemporary in second with 622. And Mystery Thriller still in first with 675. So the gap is closing between first and second. But it's all gonna, depend on what happens in the next 11 days. I totally forgot, by the way, that today was Inauguration Day. So, hooray! We have a new president! Trump's out of fucking office. Awesome. Do I necessarily like the fact that Joe Biden is the president? No. I think we could have had a much better option come along, but it's better than having Cheeto Man be in office for another 4 years and fuck everything else up even more than he already has. So I'm gonna remain hopeful. I know I don't want to talk a lot about politics right now on this channel. It's just not something that I feel is conducive to my mental health. It's actually something that I think is very draining on my mental health. I'm gonna bring a little bit more light in here. There we go. So all I basically will say is, while I don't know necessarily if Biden was the right choice for us as a new president, I'm going to remain hopeful because at the very least, things will at least be hopefully moving in a better direction than we were in. I know he has a lot of plans involved in terms of what he wants to do, many of them dealing with COVID and the coronavirus, which I do remain hopeful with, and I just really hope that also now, because we have a Senate that is Democratic, that will allow a lot more things to happen, because the last time we had a Democratic president, which was when Barack Obama was president, we had a Senate that was Republican. So things that Obama wanted to happen never happened because of the fact that the Senate basically were like, no, we're not letting you do these things because you are wrong and all these things. Because Republicans were wanting to do more conservative-based things. They wanted to really, in a lot of ways, just adhere to their people as opposed to the general public, which that's politics. That's what happens. And unfortunately, things, I think, set us all up for us to have the Cheeto Man as president for the last 4 years. I understand that I am a privileged white woman, and things in the world that happened did not necessarily affect me nearly as bad. I also am cis, and a lot of people that were trans individuals suffered a lot at the hands of the Trump administration. A lot of people of color suffered a lot of hurt. The president did not really give a shit about people that weren't of his own race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity. He didn't give a shit about any of them. It's not, especially not their race or their class. He wanted to do things that would appease his fan base, his cult, basically. So, do I feel like that with Joe Biden as president, or old white man at the helm of the realm of the United States, is it going to be better? I'm hopeful, because we also now have a Senate that is going to hopefully push through more of his ideas that seem to be more along the lines of what I think we need in this country. They're not all perfect. Not everything is going to get its attention the way it should. But I would rather, I think, have him as president at this point than have somebody again like Trump, who is just going to continuously dismantle the country and make it harder for people who are not in the normal realm of things in the world to survive. So I also appreciate the fact that we now have a female person of color as a vice president. That is going to hopefully make a lot of changes. That's hopefully going to cause a ripple effect And we also have so many people in Congress, in the Senate, that are also of varying backgrounds, more so I think than we've ever seen. And it's all because of the fact that we all stood together to bring down the Cheeto Man, made it a point that we wanted to see change. I think that after the last election, we all kind of realized, especially those that are around my age who may not have voted in the last election. I did vote. To the people that didn't vote in the last election, I think it became very clear over the last 4 years how important it was to be able to vote. I was of the mindset many years ago that my vote didn't matter because of the fact that it's all based in the Electoral College, that they're the ones that basically are more along the lines of what happened. But I think with this election we saw that that's not necessarily true, that we have that power to be able to change things even minutely. So I feel more confident that, especially with how this election had gone, that we're going to have a lot more people that are going to go out and vote, because I think they've realized that we do have the ability to change things. We do have the ability to get our vote and our voice heard in some capacity. I'm also of the mindset that I cannot go into something with blind faith, and I have to have some skepticism, because if I go in with blind faith, I am going to be sorely disappointed when things do not turn out the way I expect. I also realize that even as the leader of the United States, he does not have the full power. A lot of the power we have that is centered in this country is with Congress, and specifically the Senate. As long as really the Senate, I think, is willing to let things go through and basically allow change to happen, it will happen. I think the first and foremost thing that needs to happen at this point is getting the coronavirus under control, because we are in a country where unfortunately there's so many people who do not believe that it is a thing. They don't believe that the vaccine is going to help them in any capacity, because, you know, of various reasons. And some reasons I respect, some I don't really, but I am someone who is going to get the vaccine because I feel like it would be better for me to get it and then, you know, not have to worry about it anymore. And even if I get sick from the vaccine, I would be willing to handle it, because at the very least I will have gotten it and been able to feel a little bit better, be able to sleep a little bit better at night, I think. I have read a little bit more of Verona comics. It's been kind of a crappy day for me. I felt sad. I got angry at something that happened today during work. I just got very, very annoyed. So I haven't read a lot of it, but I have already reached the point where Jubilee now knows who Ridley is. So right now I'm on page 166. So I've read about 40, a little more than 40 pages. I don't think I'm going to be able to read any more because, like I said, I have about half an hour worth of work left, and then I do have to stream immediately after work. So I think, though, that tonight I just kind of want to chill, but I'll probably feel better once I get through and stream, because that usually makes me feel better anyway. So good morning, everybody. It is about 9:40 on Thursday. Yeah, I don't have my glasses on because I had to put my contacts I got from the eye doctor in, because I have my appointment tonight at 6:40 to like make sure that the contacts are working. The right one technically is not supposed to like be my exact prescription, but I can still see perfectly fine out of them. Like, they said it basically is like not completely my prescription that I need for my right eye, but it would still do what it needed to do. Like, it would still work. But I think my eyes are not quite adjusted to the fact that I'm wearing contacts again, because I think it's my right eye specifically. I can just feel it like constantly try to float away and stuff like that. So that was an adventure trying to get them on with these nails, but I managed to do it. It was fine. It's going to be a busy day because I not only have my eye appointment this evening at like 6:40, but I have a doctor's appointment today that I have to go to that's at 1, that I basically worked over on Tuesday to try to make up the time that I think I might be gone, but I'm a new patient with them, so I don't know if it's gonna take as long as I need or if it's gonna take longer, because I have to do like a yearly exam for women, so like they gotta check your lady bits and all that stuff. I ordered my friend Teresa's birthday gifts that should get there hopefully before her birthday, which is on the 31st, and I still have to order a bridesmaid dress for my other friend's wedding that is in April. Reading update. So yes, I actually ended up reading almost 100 pages of Verona comics yesterday, so that ended up going really well. I am technically on my first break. I had a meeting at 9, so my break had to wait until now, and I'm about to finish it. Got to page 218, so I have a little more than 100 pages left of this. I do plan on reading it a little bit more before I leave. I do plan on hopefully finishing Verona comics, because I will be taking this also to the doctor's office, because I'm fairly certain I'm going to have to wait for a little while between when the nurse goes through her thing and then when the doctor comes in. Usually it's a bit of a wait, so I figured I'd take this with me to maybe kill some time. Okay, so it's about 12:15. I got about 15 minutes before my friend is supposed to come get me. I just went to like push my glasses up all of a sudden. I am not used to wearing contacts yet. It's actually sunny outside today too. I don't know why my blinds are still closed. I'm gonna actually open them or I'm gonna like make them where they actually light it. Oh my god, it is so bright. It is super sunny out today, which is really nice. Please don't mind the acne, you know, it's just what's happening. But yeah, so I did get a little bit more read of Verona comics. Not a lot, just a couple chapters, not even probably 20 pages, but I will be taking this, like I said, to my appointment and stuff. Today ended up being a very, very busy morning. Like, I have no idea how this happened. It just got super busy all of a sudden after I finished the last clip with you guys. I would say probably almost halfway through the book is when the reveal of Ridley being part of the Everlasting family, who are like the owners of the big chain store, is him, and he reveals that to Jubilee, and it's a very short-lived kind of hatred scenario where like Jubilee doesn't want to talk to him, and they very quickly make up, which I think for this story I'm kind of okay with that, because I feel like the real crux of the story is not necessarily the romantic aspect. I feel like the real meat of the story comes from Ridley being able to stand up to his father, who is a really massive tyrant. Like, he constantly belittles Ridley. He constantly makes Ridley feel like he is worth nothing. So I think that's kind of the more big part of the story that I think is the most important aspect. But I need to go real quick because my battery's gonna die, and I actually realized I need to go get some stuff figured out. So I'll pick up on this train of thought later when I actually have some more time. Hey guys, so it's now about 4:32. I arrived back from my appointment about 3:15. It actually went a lot longer than I expected it to, but I also was basically going in for a yearly checkup, and there was just a lot of tests I needed to have done because I haven't necessarily been having health issues, but I wanted to get some stuff checked out about myself because I have diabetes on both sides of my family. Both sets of my grandparents have diabetes, or at least like diabetic history, and so I wanted to get my blood sugars checked and everything. I also have my father and my father's father had thyroid issues, had thyroid issues, and so I wanted to get that checked out just because I wanted to make sure that like I was all good. Mostly because I don't know if I've said this before, but Robert and I are planning on hopefully starting a family soon. I don't know how soon that will be. Maybe not till the end of the year, maybe not till next year, but basically I wanted to get some health stuff figured out in case, you know, I end up getting pregnant, because now that we actually are not necessarily actively trying to have a family, but we like are thinking about it kind of thing. You know, and especially because I'm not on birth control anymore and probably will not go back on birth control for a while, if at all. I really wanted to make sure that if I got pregnant, I wasn't going to be dealing with any major health issues that could then affect the baby. And if I do find out that I have some health conditions that could affect my child in the long run, we will deal with it. But I kind of wanted to like make sure that my health was in order, basically. So there's that. I had to get my blood drawn, so my friend ended up actually getting me food, which was really nice of him. He was super, super nice about coming to pick me up and everything, so I appreciate him very, very much. And then I got home, and I have about 10 more minutes until I have to end up finishing work, because since I went over the time I thought I was going to, I decided just to work over a little bit today so that I could make up that 45 minutes extra that I was gone, and then that way I don't have to worry about doing that tomorrow when I have to stream. So there's that. I did read a little bit while I was at the doctor's office. I think I read like a few chapters, which was probably like about 20 pages or so before I got called in. Like, they got me in super quick. And even having to sit and wait for somebody, it took maybe not more than like a couple minutes, which I was surprised by. Because normally when I go to the doctor, it's like 15 minutes sometimes between when like I talk to a nurse or somebody, and then when I actually get seen by the doctor. I think I'm about to cross or have already crossed the 250 page mark, so I have about 70 pages left. I think I could finish Verona Comics tonight. And then I think the next book I'm gonna read is gonna have to be one of my other D&D books, which probably the one I'll do is Gemina by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I probably will get that one started, and then the last D&D book I need to read before the end of the month is All the Crooked Saints by Maggie Stiefvater, so that'll probably be one of my weekend reads for this weekend. Hey guys, so it's going on about 8:30 at night, and I have finally finished Verona Comics. So I am gonna give this a 4 out of 5 stars, I think. I really, really enjoyed this. Like, from the very beginning of the story, I was immediately attached to these characters. I really, I think, felt for Ridley a lot, mostly because of the fact that the anxiety attacks and the kind of thought spirals that he kind of would go through on page, which trigger warning for things like panic attacks and anxious thoughts and spiraling thoughts and the like. I felt like I really connected with him in that aspect because the way his brain kind of worked in a lot of ways was similar to mine. However, I also do want to place trigger warnings for suicidal ideation. There is a mention of a past suicide attempt and various things like that. I also feel like I really related to Jubilee in a lot of ways because Jubilee is, someone who's very determined of what she wants to do. She knows what she wants to do. She's very headstrong about it, and she's also somebody that's like not gonna really change her mind on something. When she knows that what she wants, she's gonna go after it, kind of thing. So I felt like these two, for one, they were just a very charismatic couple. You kind of like get to see over the course of the story like how very easy it is for them to have a kind of relationship. They just seem to click very well. I think too that a lot of the characters that we got to see throughout the book, like Jubilee's stepmother Vera, friends Jayla and Nikki, and Ridley's sister Gray, we really get to see a lot of interesting characters kind of come up and get some of their personalities. There's another character that Jubilee knows who's kind of like an older brother character almost to her, and his name's Frankie. We don't see him very much in the story, but enough to where like you can kind of get a really good personality from him, and you just kind of understand why Jubilee, is like connected to him in a sense and what his purpose is. The thing I think that like I didn't necessarily care for, and it's not that I didn't care for it, I guess it was something more of like I didn't expect it to happen because it just kind of came out of nowhere, but I appreciated what it ended up actually doing is the overall ending of the story. So we kind of have like two major climaxes in the story. The first one having to do with the fact that at first Jubilee doesn't know that Ridley is Ridley. She just knows there is a guy, Ridley, who's been kind of hanging out in the comic book store that she runs with her stepmom. And then there's Bats, who is the guy that she met at the prom Comic-Con that she goes to in the beginning of this book. She doesn't know that they're the same person, and so we do see a climax with that because obviously it's going to have to come out at some point. There is another climax, though, that kind of hits really hard towards the end of the book, and it's something I think I didn't realize would happen, or it wasn't something I thought would go, because like basically the story goes in one way where you feel like there's only one track of how something's going to happen, right? Like when we go into a story, we kind of have the idea that it could go any way, but we all kind of have this idea going into a story where like it's gonna go down one path. But basically this kind of had like the odd ending to like a choose your own adventure game of sorts where like you pick one particular path thinking that it's going to go down this particular way, but it ends up actually giving you a completely different ending because of other choices that you make. Like basically the ending comes out differently than you expect because of all the choices you made within the story, if that makes sense. So basically the overall ending of the story, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a sad note by any means, but it's not as happily ever after as I had expected it to be. And I think that it wasn't necessarily bad by any means, but I think that just the general ending of the story, what kind of happened, and how the story ended was very unexpected for me. And I almost feel like it was kind of unnecessary. Like there was something that, very traumatic event that basically happened that caused a lot of things to happen. And not all of them good. And so I feel like the kind of trauma that was induced in the story didn't necessarily have to happen. However, saying that out loud now, I kind of feel like it was necessary. Like there is a whole theme that goes in with like the accident itself that happens, the trauma that happens. At first, when I had started seeing what was happening, I kind of thought that there was going to be this over reliance on trauma as like the end all be all of a relationship, where like especially if the one of the individuals in the relationship has a very traumatic past, how that can sometimes overrun the relationship, because that's not often what we see. But at the same time, we see a lot of times where things are just rainbows and daisies, and that's not really how things work out either. So I'm a little conflicted because I feel like this ending brought up that idea that sometimes with traumatic events, not everything is as roses and daisies as like you would expect. But it ended still on a fairly hopeful note, I guess you could say. Oh my god, how do I rate this? How do I rate this book with that in mind? I think just feeling so unsettled with how this story makes me feel, I think I'm going to cut it down the middle and we're going to say 4.5. Because while I think now, thinking out loud, that the ending is not nearly as, crazy or weird as I thought it was originally, I still am hesitant, I think, to give it a full 5 star. However, on Goodreads, you can't mark anything with a half star still, so I'm gonna end up rounding it up to a 5 star. But in my bullet journal, I will mark it in as a 4.5 star, and speak about it from now on as a 4.5 star book. But I like this book a lot. I wouldn't even say I go so far as to say I love it. Like I almost kind of want to get my own copy of it and have it for my own, because I think that this one, just like with Felix Ever After, it's such a heartwarming story that I would want to reread it again and again, and especially this one being kind of more based in a romantic setting as opposed to Felix Ever After. I feel like this would just bring me all kinds of warm fuzzies that I think a lot of people typically get from romantic comedies. Like, there's a couple romantic comedies where I get that feeling, but not nearly as often as most people do. So I think this is definitely one of the exceptions for me, is that I feel like this is just a really good story. And I think that because, like I said, I really connected with the characters, and I really felt that the relationship, while it was a little quick, was fairly organic. I think that it's just a really good book. I really think that, especially if you're someone who is interested in like comics, it's not a lot of talk about the comics, but it basically, you've got two characters who are comic fans, where they meet at a convention, and it has a bit of a Romeo and Juliet almost kind of scenario. It's not necessarily a straight Romeo and Juliet telling, but plays on some of the elements of the Romeo and Juliet story. You definitely, I think, would enjoy this, because I think that it marries all of these things very well, kind of putting this in a more modern setting, and especially with the rise in comics and graphic novels kind of there being more recently, this is actually very timely. And apparently this actually was published in 2020. I don't know exactly when, but according to the copyright that is in the book at the beginning of it, it does say it was published in 2020. So it does feel very, very modern. It feels very timely. It feels very easy to see it happening in a real life scenario. And truthfully, I'll say this. I think if this was to be made into like, I don't know, like a Netflix rom-com, I think it would do really well. I think that there would be a lot of people that would really enjoy this, because I think that with all of the modernities that are involved in it, and the fact that it kind of plays on a timeless love story, I think it would just do very well. And I think you could very easily make this into like a rom-com movie. Like, I don't see how anybody wouldn't be able to. I actually feel like I should tell one of my friends who's in screenwriting, who's looking for projects to work on, maybe to look at this one and see if she can make anything with it, because she's kind of wanting to do kind of dramatizations of sorts. So maybe I will talk to her about this. Maybe give her a project to work on or something. Just to kind of get her going, I guess, more than anything. But I really like this. I would definitely recommend it to any of you that are looking for just a really cute rom-com story, which completes one of the books I needed for my D&D TBR, which was to read a friend pick. This book was picked by my friend Adri, and I'm actually really excited that she picked something I really love, because I think that that means from now on, anything I get recommended by her in terms of romance is definitely going to be something I'm going to like, because she picked this one knowing that I'm not as big of a fan of romance. More specifically, I'm not a fan of like the Harlequin romances, but I do appreciate romance in general. But she said that this one is very sweet, and especially since it's also YA, it's a little bit more palatable, a little bit easier to fall in love with, kind of a thing. But I think now I would definitely trust her with any kind of recommendation in terms of like a romantic story. I think she definitely sees my taste, and I think she definitely understands like what it is that I look for when it comes to romance, where it's not just about the romance, there's other things involved with it. So I will definitely be hitting her up for more recommendations in the future. So, like I said, it's now about just after 8:30, so I'm going to actually probably get started with my next book, which is going to be, like I said, Gemina by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is another D&D TBR book that I have. This one is to read a book that has 2 or more authors. This has 2 authors. It's also the second book in the Illuminae files, which I read Illuminae back in June, and I really, really loved that. I love the mixed media of this, and I feel like even though it's such a big book, the mixed media portion makes it easier for you to fly through it, which I think is part of the point. And I also really love the kind of sci-fi nature of it, and so this is also counting for one of my sci-fi books for the Battle of the Bookish, which is to read a book that is set in space, because all of these books that are kind of companion novels, which is also really nice, they all take place in space. The book itself is about 659 pages, so it's a bit of a chonker, like it's big, but like I said, because of the mixed media format, it'll sometimes go a little quicker. I got Princess getting ready to stream here, and Jasmine from Pardon My Rage with me in chat. I've got my book and my tea sitting over there, but now I need my AirPods. Hello everybody, it is going on 1:30 now on Friday. Yay! It's fucking Friday. Oh my god, I'm so happy. Like, it really fucking sucks sometimes that the weekend is so short, because like some weeks like this week where it feels like I'm just doing the most monotonous of tasks for like the entirety of the week that I work. I really look forward to like having a few days off, but it feels like it just goes by so fucking fast, and I don't know if that's because I'm an adult and so time is no longer relevant or whatever, but there's that. So last night I got through the first 43 pages of Gemina. I was really tired, and I think that my brain was just kind of short-circuiting a little bit because of the reading I did yesterday, and the fact that yesterday I had 2 different appointments for like health stuff, so I was just very, very tired. I was exhausted, but also that's a good floppy paperback, I'm just gonna say. But right now I'm currently on page 77, so I've read about another 30 so pages, and I'm actually going to be on a break here right now, so I'm going to read a little bit more. I like this. The only thing we really know though so far going in is that there's, like I said, Hannah. Hannah is a captain's daughter. Like, they are aboard what's called the Hemdall. Hannah is the captain's daughter on this place that I think it's called the Hemdall Waypoint, and the Hypatia is like making its way there, I think. I'm fairly certain. Yeah. So they're basically waiting for this ship to come in, which is, I think, the ship that we saw in Illuminae. Hannah is involved with one of the junior commanders, I guess. Like, she's been dating him for a while, and there's this kind of very easy romantic relationship with them. But I think she's also kind of interested in this other character whose name is Nick. He is part of a crime family, basically. A really big crime family called the House of Knives, and the way that they know each other is Hannah is kind of like a drug user of sorts. They have this drug called dust that they go into how they make that, and I'm not going to go into it because I'm not even sure of the intricacies of it as of yet, but there's a drug called dust that Nick supplies her. That's part of the crime family's thing, is that part of it they do with drugs, all these things, and Nick basically has this really big crush on Hannah. She, I think, kind of knows it, and she kind of hints at the fact that she may have a bit of a crush on him too, but they haven't had like the easiest of like interactions, because the first time they met, she ended up breaking his arm basically when he tried to touch her. So there's that. And kind of since then, with this fact that they kind of are like a supplier and buyer kind of relationship, it's kind of been awkward almost. And Nick knows how very involved she is with her relationship with this guy Jackson. And she's kind of like not really as interested in him, I think, as he is in her. So there's kind of this like romantic thing going on. But in the background of all of this, we have a lot of stuff going on with Baytech still, where they are being like obviously tried. Like the beginning of the story, you find out that there's a trial going on where Baytech is basically getting accused of this attack they did on the planet that we see in Illuminae, that sets off kind of the whole story, where a planet gets invaded by these like monstrosity like machines or whatever, or ships, and a bunch of people keep dying. And so that's how Katie and, I still can't remember his name, the love interest in that one, they both end up getting on like different ships or something like that. And so they're kind of like having to communicate back and forth to make sure each other are okay, because they had just broken up previous to that. And this is all happening after that. The beginning of this book goes into this trial where somebody that's involved with the Baytech Industries is like going on trial, and the whole story that comes up is basically communications that are relevant to this case, because it also then goes into, you know, how there's testimonies from Nick and Hannah about what happened at the waypoint, things of that nature. And so they basically they're using basically the communications, the surveillance footage, dossiers, and all these things involving the two of them in terms of what they saw and kind of how things led up to what they witnessed, which is kind of the big bad event that happens, that kind of thing. So good morning, everybody. It is Saturday. It's going on about, I think it's just after 10 o'clock in the morning, and I have some like no effort curls this morning, which I'm really excited about, because I slept with wet hair in a bun last night, and so it gave me some really nice curls on the bottom of my hair. It just looks really nice. I don't know. So I just had to put some earrings in for the first time in a long time, because I thought it looked really pretty, especially with this kind of turtleneck sweater that I have that I got for Christmas from my grandma. But I want to talk a little bit about Gemina. Last night I ended up getting to page 84, so I read probably like 40 pages basically all the course of the day yesterday, which is not a lot, but it's fine. I'm going to take this on my trip with me today, going to my parents' house, because we're going to go hang out with them and see them for the first time in a little while. We're also going there to pick up a few things that, like Christmas presents that were late that we got, or that they got recently. So one of them being, my mom had got me this wax warmer. I'll show you. So my mom got me this Jack Skellington Nightmare Before Christmas wax warmer from Scentsy, and it's got like a little tray up here for where the wax goes, but it was supposed to come with a certain like limited edition scent, but they weren't being shipped together. So she got the wax melts that go with this, and then there were some presents that my grandmother that lives in Texas and her partner that they had packaged and shipped. It's kind of like an actual purposeful trip to go down there, but I also just want to go see my family, because I haven't seen my mom in a couple weeks, but I haven't seen my dad in about, I would say probably like a month, so I want to go see them for a little bit. And then I think we're also going to go see Robert's family as well, because we haven't seen his parents and anything since Christmas, so it's been a little bit. So yeah, I think it's time for us to go say hi for a little while and kind of just go spend the day back there, which is fine. And then I think I'm gonna even go say hi to like my nana and papa, because they live right next door to my parents. So, but as far as what I'm thinking of Illuminae, 84 pages in, I like it. I don't really feel like I have many opinions as of yet, because I don't feel like I've really got through the first good part of the story, because this book is like nearly 700 pages long, so we're still not really in like the real meat of the story. We're not really yet in the conflict area of the story as of yet. We're still kind of like in the exposition stage. Anyway, that's kind of all I wanted to say, last minute updates kind of thing. I will talk to all of you guys next week. It will also be the last week of the Battle of the Bookish, so everybody that is participating, make sure that you get your books read, get your points in, because it will literally make or break this readathon. Sci-fi is still in last place. We are trailing very far behind just because there are so many people in the fantasy and especially contemporary teams that are just stacking up their points, which is ridiculous. We will see how all that plays out next week, but I will talk to all of you guys when I see you then. So, bye guys.